Argentina has both advantages and challenges in the global geopolitical landscape. Argentina is rich in natural resources, including oil, gas, minerals, and agricultural land. Strategic location, Argentina is situated at the southern end of South America, with access to both the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Argentina has strong cultural ties with Europe, particularly Spain and Italy, which could provide valuable economic and political connections. Its main challenges are economic instability. Argentina has a history of economic instability, including high inflation, debt crises, and currency devaluations. Political instability. Argentina has experienced political instability, including corruption scandals, coups, and social unrest. While Argentina's location can be an advantage, it can also be a challenge due to the country's isolation from major economic and political centers. Argentina's geopolitical future will be shaped by its ability to manage its internal challenges and leverage its natural resources in strategic location. Argentina could benefit from developing closer ties with Brazil, which could provide a larger market for its exports and help mitigate some of the challenges of geographic isolation. Argentina may also need to adopt more market-friendly economic policies to attract foreign investment and improve its economic stability. Argentina's defining geographic feature is also the bedrock of its success. A series of South American rivers meet and empty into the Atlantic Ocean, 1/3 of the way down Argentina's Atlantic coastline. The Rio de la Plata is one of the largest estuaries in the world and a massive commercial hub. The three rivers that merge into it are themselves navigable. The Uruguay, Paraguay, and Parana rivers snake deep into the country's northern reaches, including through most of the populated parts. The river's placement is ideal, directly overlying the Pampas region, the world's fourth largest contiguous chunk of arable, temperate zone agricultural land and one of the world's most naturally fertile. The Parana and Uruguay rivers bracket a slice of territory that is among the world's most productive rangelands. Territory to the river's west is particularly good for corn and soy. To the south, the land dries out and becomes perfect for wheat. The entire Pampas is far enough south of the equator that it sees actual winter, unlike most of the countries farther north in South America. The winter insect kills are sufficient to keep pests under control, drastically improving public health and agricultural productivity without the need for medications and pesticides. The Pampas is the Midwest of South America. Deep indentations in the country's coastline again that Plata estuary make it not only the country's best port, but also place the city in the middle of the Pampas. All the core Argentine territories lie within 500 miles of the capital. Cargo shipments within the core have little choice but to originate or terminate in the capital, and there are no geographic barriers whatsoever within that core zone. Everything naturally gravitates to Buenos Aires. The country's omnipresent plains and plentiful rivers make it easy for the state to project power and gives would-be rebels nowhere to hide. A meaningful amphibious assault is functionally impossible. The southern cone is the most remote populated location on Earth. Back on land to the west of the Argentine core towers the meridional section of the southern Andes, steep-sloped granite peaks so far south of the equator and so high that most boast permanent snowcap. Few passes thread these mountains at all, and winter snows and avalanches typically seal off all but 4 of those. The region's singular access point, combined with its navigable rivers, combined with its late opening, meant the entire region was thrown open to settlement at once. By the time the Argentine lands started settlement, the Spanish crown had outlawed native enslavement and chronic labor shortages were the norm. Robust capital plus free, high-quality land plus massive labor shortages meant that none of the rich settlers wanted to farm. Ranching was the way to go, with the wealthy settlers finding themselves toiling right alongside their gauchos. All the output had no choice but to sail down to Buenos Aires to be processed for export. Juan Domingo Perón ascended to the presidency in 1946. Perón's cult of personality is a study in contradictions. Peronism views the state as the ultimate guarantor of workers' rights, but also dissolves unions and criminalizes workers' right to protest while lobbying on their behalf. It makes the government the primary mover of the economy, but uses a communist cum fascist approach to public and private ownership of the means of production. Under Peronism and oftentimes violent bouts of anti-Peronism, Argentina lost almost everything. Once a leading power in wheat, corn, pork, beef, oil, and natural gas markets, Argentina nearly became an importer of all of them. Once the undisputed second power of the Western Hemisphere, Argentina is barely even relevant within its own region. Pretty much everything that made the Argentines rich, sophisticated, and powerful has bled away. Yet even suffering from a history of politicians who are unique in their deliberate incompetence, Argentina is set up phenomenally well for the disorder to come. First, Argentina is beyond the back of beyond. While in the contemporary era of nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, the southern cone isn't nearly as isolated as it was in the sail era, it is still a long trip to Buenos Aires from the Eastern Hemisphere. America's de facto enforcement of the Monroe Doctrine will keep any would-be predators out of South America. Add Brazil's general discombobulation, and there are no countries on the planet except New Zealand with as good a physical security position as Argentina. Second, and somewhat ironically, despite Argentine safety, the country remains packed with everything the wider world needs. Despite the recent ravages of Peronist governments in the 2000s and 2010s, the country's export potential for any number of temperate zone agricultural products remains massive. It wouldn't take a very forward-looking government policy to upgrade Argentine output to the point the country could storm into the world's top 10 list of producers or exporters of corn, soy, wheat, poultry, and beef. Argentina also sports significant shale petroleum reserves. While shale deposits are fairly common globally, most of the world's are not all that useful. Most are thin and petroleum poor and located inconveniently far from population centers. Not so in Argentina. Here, they rival those in North America, petroleum dense and proximate to pre-existing oil transport infrastructure already linked to major metropolitan regions. Bringing such fields online would take a few years instead of a few decades. Argentina's coming shale boom probably won't be as transformative as the United States, but it will still be large enough to make Argentina a significant exporter of natural gas and oil, just as it was in the mid-20th century. Argentina already boasts the world's third largest shale oil and natural gas production, behind only the United States and Canada. Argentina is coolly in the top 5 countries globally for solar and wind potential. Every electron green power can generate locally is another bit of petroleum available for export. Even better and rarer, Argentina's population structure is sublime for a country at its stage of development. In part, this is an inadvertent legacy of Peronism. One of Peronism's most pernicious impacts is its subsidization of basic goods. Lower prices for food and electricity encourages the population to use more than they would normally. At first, the government has to pay for the difference, but once the government runs out of money and maxes out its ability to borrow, the cost is passed on to producers. Faced with government price caps that are below the cost of production, most producers do what comes naturally. They stop producing